All right, let's go to this conversation now. As you can see on the side of your screen, we are waiting for the President and the Chief Justice to, of course, begin that handover process of the final installment of the State Capture Commission's report. And of course, this is the final installment. It has, it will be officially handed over to the President in a short while. Now, this is a tome, we understand, of over 1,800 pages, and it will be available to download online. It is going to be touching on various entities like SABC, PRASA, State Security Agency, among others. Now, let's look at this particular report and the significance of it, therefore, with Advocate Kevin Malunga, a former Deputy Public Protector and Academic Head of Law at Genesis Business School. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Let's begin by talking about the delays. I mean, we've seen the delays over the weekend. Now, here we are again. We expected it to start at 4. It still has not started. It's starting to feed into quite a lot of speculation out there, does it not?
Well, unnecessary speculation, remember when we wrote the report, I was part of that team at the time. We said 180 days. It was a rather too ambitious an estimate to say, look. But I think that's part of what has been the biggest challenge with this entire commission. In fact, all these commissions, I was also involved in remember we were together there at Marikana Commission in Marikana many years back. Yes,
dragged on for 3 years.
Yes,
even.
And it again, and that's one of the biggest gripe that taxpayers have, to say, look, these things are tax guzzlers. They spend a lot of money. I haven't even seen the last figures of the Zondo Commission, that it probably is over $1 billion by now.
And if you talk about that, because a lot of people have a gripe about that very thing, would you say what we've seen with these previous commissions has been really worth it in terms of accountability? Because that's essentially what people look for, especially when there's so much money spent.
In terms of affirming South Africa as a country where the rule of law works and where there's accountability, yes. But in terms of optimal use of tax money, absolutely not. So it's a delicate balance, and I think there's lessons to be learned in future. Remember, this is a commission that is set up in terms of the Commissions Act. It's a very old piece of legislation. I think it's 1955 or 65, thereabout. And there's not much in there to say, except to say the president can set up a commission, blah, blah, blah. But there's not much in terms of the logistical side of it, the frugality, etc. So those are the things I suspect that have to be learned. And, with this very disparate and divided parliament that is there right now, at least they will probably have to agree on something, which is to amend that piece of legislation and tighten controls with these commissions, etc. And of course, it can't just be a blank check. As far as it goes, but in terms of affirming the values of accountability and the fact that this is not your so-called typical banana republic, that is a good thing. That has actually gone well, and I've mentioned before that when this commission started, I was still Deputy Public Protector, and I was asked at the time by the head of the investigation to say, what's your advice on this? What should we do? How should we go about? Because remember, this had been our recommendation. And I said, look, the most important thing that you need to look at is forensics. Remember, judges very often are used to applying the law to the facts of a particular issue, and that's it. Whereas by nature, if you're going to be accusing people of things, you've got to have proof that they did what you're alleging. So, and I think that's probably that has probably been one of the delaying aspects. And I think they've done fairly well in that regard.
And do you then foresee, because forensics, as you say, is going to be critical, especially going forward, and we are now waiting for this installment, which we understand will be now handed over at 6:30. How do you see the challenges coming in there? Because others are arguing to say that, for example, you are putting it out there to say there's a case for the NPA to now investigate. So you have not successfully linked me to what you are accusing me of in this particular report. How then does that begin to play out in the courts in terms of challenges?
It will go back to the quality of police work, the Hawks, the NPA. Remember, this is a commission. It just put the information out there. And I think they've done a fairly good job in terms of forensic side of things. But it's not the way it ends. The people who are accused of things or who have been labeled, etc., also have rights. So it's a two-way street. So it's going to be about the quality of the internal forensic aspect of the NPA themselves. They haven't covered themselves in glory over the past few years, and I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone, but their record is not very, very high in terms of the number of prosecutions. At least that I'm sure they can agree in terms of these high-profile things. Maybe in terms of the normal sort of day-to-day things that affect normal members of the public, they probably are quite efficient. But in terms of these so-called high-profile, white-collar crime, corruption in terms of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, and all these other things that people have been looking at over the years, they haven't really put a big dent in there. There's been a lot of hype, but not much of a bang, as it were.
So they are in the spotlight as the NPA right now, as you say, when it comes to accountability and the Hawks and what exactly is going to happen. But there's another, issue that we then saw in the spotlight in the commission. The ANC pretty much saying that it was on trial, given the fact that it was the governing party and this happened under their watch. And I was reading, of course, just as one of the reports came out, Deputy Minister Thabang Makwetla saying that he feels like this report was targeting the ANC. A lot of what has come out was targeting the ANC. Do you think, though, that this was avoidable given the kind of allegations that were even leveled against the political party heading up to this particular process?
Yeah, Wonyo, I never thought in my lifetime I would quote Michael Jackson in a serious legal television interview when he says in his song "Man in the Mirror," and he says, "Let the man in the mirror look at himself and make a change." Right? If you can't pay your salaries, how do you expect to govern a country? So those are the kind of things, and it's an illustrious liberation movement, no doubt about it. No one questions that. But the way the administrative side of things and how it has done things, its own revenue generation methods have been dismal. And I think Zondo has put that mirror on, Michael Jackson's mirror on that aspect. And no one, it would be foolhardy to say, oh, no, we don't have a problem when you can't pay your salaries. I mean, that's how a lot of liberation movements across the African continent have turned from the darling of the people to sticking out like a sore thumb. So they really have to listen and not be defensive. Yeah, they have to look at the mirror.
And in 20 seconds, there's also going to need to be accountability in terms of the big corporations, so they don't get away with this and we see a repeat of what happened. Because think about Bain and Company, think about EOH that we've also seen being covered on the report. Oh,
absolutely. It goes even right in Zondo's own backyard, his office of the Chief Justice. Because remember, when he makes pronouncements on other people, he must look at the Thomson Reuters has a very smelly contract that just came out there. So definitely the idea of accountability is there for everyone. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what comes out from that state capture report. A lot of people are watching this one very closely to see which side it really goes towards, because we do know the SABC will feature there. There'll also be State Security Agency. There's also going to be various, parts of it that are going to be touching on different entities. But let's leave it there for now and go for a quick ad break. That was Advocate Kevin Malunga, a former Deputy Public Protector and Academic Head of Law at Genesis Business School.